Well, good evening, this is Hound Dog Steve wishing you a very pleasant evening. And here is this article by Rob Kiyosaki, and this is the chap that wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and he offers financial advice. And basically what he is talking about is getting into alternate currencies and getting out of the mainstream central banking fiat-based fractional reserve currency known as money. Because this is a system which was built by the elites, basically for the elites, and it is not in our best interest at all, and it basically leaves us broke through inflation, the silent theft of inflation, whilst the people who have access to 0% money are making out like bandits. It's what Max Kaiser calls the interest rate apartheid. That is that people at the low end get to borrow money at 100-200% from these payday loan places, and the banks and so on and so forth get to borrow their money at virtually 0% or just above 0%. Now the main thing he's talking about getting into is cryptocurrency. And now cryptocurrency is an interesting subject, and of course we could take up oodles of time just talking about it, but as you can see, I mean, one of the things that we need to bear in mind is that the money that is being created right now in this crisis will never be paid back. There is just so much money has been printed at interest, so this means we're into exponential growth. Those debts will never ever be paid. And of course the other major problem that it's going to cause is inflation, because the more money you print, the less each paper dollar is worth. And that is why gold, of course, is a traditional go-to in these times of inflation, because you can't inflate gold. Now, of course, we are in a digital age, and you cannot inflate Bitcoin either. Now, the blockchain, if I see anything with the government's fingerprint or the central bank's fingerprint on any kind of blockchain system or token, I will not touch that with a 10-foot barge pole. But Bitcoin itself, Litecoin, Etherium, and of course there are other platforms if you want to speculate. One that I particularly like right now, I think has a future, is Theta coin. And Theta coin is a blockchain streaming, video streaming platform. And there is someone from Samsung on their board, and Samsung is getting ready to load Theta into every new Samsung phone to stream ESPN sports programs live. And so I think there is a great need for that, and as you can see, the amount of broadband that is being used up now through streaming is absolutely phenomenal. And of course one of the things about streaming is that there is a lot of duplication, and so Theta it'll basically avoid all copyright issues because it will be on the blockchain and it will not be allowed to be copied, and it will also avoid duplication. So much of YouTube's broadband, I'm sure, is taken up with abandoned channels, channels that really aren't working at all. People are just re-uploading and this kind of stuff. All of that will be done away with. I mean, I cannot imagine what servers YouTube has to handle all of this data that they're processing. Anyway, that's just me speculating. This is not financial advice. This is just something that I've been looking at, and when I look through the cryptocurrency platforms, I look for utility, and this has utility. But that's not the only form of alternate currency that you can get into. There are our banks, there are alternate currencies, there are LETs, local exchange and trading systems. There is just you can do a food bank, a food share, a co-op. There is all kinds of things that you can do to buy out of the system. Now, of course, it's not going to be easy, because we are forced in many ways to use the system that is in place, and so it is virtually unavoidable. But what I would suggest is that you start preparing yourself to transition into some kind of cryptocurrency, at least know how to do it, and buy a little bit. You don't have to buy a lot, buy a little bit, just as a bit of a sort of hedge against inflation and accessibility to trade. You know, if suddenly, and you know, I don't know how many people who are old enough watching this channel, but I mean, there are currencies that wouldn't be accepted at one time. The Russian ruble, for example, that was never accepted in Europe. That's why the dollar was always the strongest currency there is, and it's called a hard currency. But there were, you know, the drachma in Greece, most of your African currencies, most of your communist currencies, they were not accepted on the open market, and they all had to be traded into hard currency in their own countries before they could leave and or purchase anything outside of the boundaries of that country or the borders of that country. And so, yes, we've forgotten what money really is. Again, this is something that I like about Bitcoin, is it reduces money back to its primary function, and that is as a token of exchange. Anyway, let's just pop over this article and read through, and I'll come back and do a quick wrap-up. Okie dokie, here we go. From Zero Hedge, Robert Rich Dad Poor Dad Kiyosaki, what the elites don't want you to know. Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, says there's something the elitists don't want you to know. There's a simple way to take back your power, and it involves removing yourself from any centralized banking system. These centralized banking systems were all set up for the elite by the elite, and they don't want you to know you can remove yourself from the system, or the matrix, so to speak. All you have to do is invest and spend outside of their system. Decentralized systems are already in place, and the key to breaking free involves understanding that the central banks were not set up to help you. The Federal Reserve, the United States Central Bank, has printed, created out of thin air, more than $2 trillion since the global economic crisis began. And when the Fed prints money, it makes the price of assets like gold, silver and Bitcoin go up. As Robert Kiyosaki says, central banks are run by the controlling elite. These elites do not like gold because central banks cannot print gold. Equally, central banks do not like Bitcoin and the blockchain because what Robert calls people's money does not need central bankers either. Today, billions of people are trapped in a central banking system owned by the mega rich and are losing big time because they are saving money. Kiyosaki says he knew the leaders of the world were screwed up, but even he didn't think they were as diabolical as they've revealed themselves to be. People are missing out on one of the biggest catastrophic cash heists of the whole world, says Kiyosaki. Our governments have really screwed up, he adds, so it's time to leave the system or be dragged into slavery by staying in it. After all, they shut down the world to cover up something very, very big. Kiyosaki says to get crypto. The reason he likes it is because it's outside the system. The elitists and politicians cannot control Bitcoin, and they are terrified of people realizing this. This is panicking all of the control systems of the globe, the governments. They do not want you to figure this out. This was put in a fine way by a man named Ducey, who understands, like Kiyosaki, that we are embedded in this matrix of mind control. But we can remove ourselves, and it's remarkably easy. But first, it's important for you to understand why they need you to think you can't be free of the rigged system. Once you figure it out, you'll break out immediately, and it renders them useless. As Ducey says, what good is a lifetime politician that's been a politician for 40 years, that's made all this money off taxpayer money, theft and insider investing? What good are they if we realize we can create a better world without them? It renders them useless. Now, what good are the people that are behind the scenes, pulling the strings on those types of puppets? And we don't even know who they are, as they hide in the shadows. What good are they? None. And that's why there's a vested interest in censorship and control of any information that uplifts and changes the thought patterns of too many people. And this is the video I will link below. In short, to break free from the system means to stop using the money and paying them taxes to keep you enslaved. Instead, use alternative currencies that cannot be manipulated, and realize that you don't need a master or a ruler ordering you around, because without them we can still work together and create a future worth living. This is all part of the Great Awakening, says Ducey. You can remain enslaved to the system, or you can wake up, let go of it, and start really living now. I think it's happening anyway, so you might as well make the decision to live freely anyway. The longer you hold out and insist you need a master dictating your life, the harder this transition to a better way of life will be for you. Very interesting point. Good ideas don't require force. Think about that. Good ideas don't require force. Now, I know a lot of you are unsure about cryptocurrencies, but I think this is probably one of the good side effects of being locked down and people using their credit cards online, is that it's helping people change their idea of what currency is. And of course, you see, when you use your credit card, it becomes obvious it's not money at all, but digital exchange tokens. And that's all cryptocurrencies are, is digital exchange tokens. And it really depends on what currency is going to be accepted and what isn't going to be accepted. And that goes into digital currencies as well. I mean, say for example, if you have a Canadian credit card and they're not accepting Canadian dollars, where you want to trade overseas, say you want to buy something on Amazon from Europe, and they won't accept Canadian dollars in Europe, well, you're out of luck. So what you need now is an intermediary, and you will have to trade into a currency that will be acceptable to that person in France. And this is where the idea of a different kind of token comes into play. And I think people really are getting their heads around this idea of, yes, this is just a token of exchange, and we need to have something that establishes trust at a distance, and that's exactly what Bitcoin does. I think, of course, Bitcoin will be used for larger currency transactions because it is slightly slower, and of course there is only 25 million coins in Bitcoin, and that is what gives it its value. And like gold, you cannot inflate Bitcoin, and any blockchain system means that you cannot commit fraud, and it will root out fraud before it takes place. This is why the bankers and the government are absolutely scared to death of cryptocurrencies and the blockchain, because they can't do fractional reserve with blockchain, because blockchain picks it up and throws it out exactly for what it is, a fraud. Taking $1 and creating 9 and lending out those $9 at interest is a fraud. And if you did that at home, try doing that. Try getting with your photocopier, set it to color, and try printing off $9 for every $1 real that you have in your hand, and try spending them and see what happens. You will be arrested immediately for passing counterfeit currency, which is a fraud. Okay, so what the banks are committing is a fraud every single day of the week. So yes, try everything you can, whatever you can do to get away from using the central bank system. Use it when you have to. I would avoid using your credit card if you have to. I would stick to cash. Cash is very, very liquid, as they say. You can't give someone a piece of plastic. If that piece of plastic don't work, if you can't get it in that machine, if you can't get money out, it's no good to you. Okay, so start using the idea of cash, and I think that's what will happen locally, is that we will use some kind of local currency for your local purchases, and we will use some kind of crypto-based currency for our international-based currencies, which will be marked against some reserve currency, which I fully believe will be Bitcoin. We have proven that we cannot be trusted as human beings. We need something that is completely independent and arbitrary and treats everybody the same, no favors, because money and the means of exchange is one of the few things that we really have to be able to trust if we're going to have any kind of meaningful trading system between countries. This has been a huge problem with money in the past. This is why gold was shipped backwards and forwards on ships, to Europe, so there was a means of exchange. This was very, very clumsy and complicated. We've gone through currency situations, where you had to change, as I say, from a soft currency like rubles into a hard currency like dollars. and so that wasn't, it was partially international, but it wasn't completely international. Now we have finally moved into the international currency, and that is Bitcoin. So get yourself used to using it. What I use in Canada here is CoinSquare is my exchange, and Binance for some of the more exotic currencies that you cannot get on CoinSquare. I like CoinSquare because it will function with Canadian banks, and you can send an e-transfer to take money out of your bank account and put it into the exchange. Make your purchase and then transfer your purchase into your wallet. And of course all of this stuff was done back in those heady days when things, pre-outbreak. So there you go. But start using some of the stuff, even if it's in a small way. I know there are not many places that will accept cryptocurrencies, but that is about to change in a hurry when everyone realizes that all of this money that has been borrowed to cover people's expenses during the outbreak has to be paid back and cannot be paid back, and that's going to be a shocker. So now you'll find in the description box below I will leave a link to James Corbett and 100 Years of Enslavement. This is the history of the Federal Reserve, and I will also leave the link to the video that was mentioned in the article. Okay, well, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, comment and subscribe below, and then in the meantime, this is Soundlog Steve signing off, wishing you a very pleasant evening, and we'll talk very, very shortly. See you now. Take care. Bye.